Hello student, I am Professor Devashish Bose, Head Department of Criminology and Forensic Science, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. Let's start our discussion while taking a look at what we are going to learn today. Module 1 as Introduction and Definition of Chain of Custody. Module 2 Procedure of Chain of Custody. Module 3 Importance of Chain of Custody in Court. Module 4 Need of Chain of Custody. Module 5 will be Chain of Custody in various physical evidences. Module 6 a small case study, and finally will be our Module 7 conclusion. Dear student, today we will have a very interesting topic on chain of custody. In this topic, we will discuss different points of chain of custody, such as definition of chain of custody, how chain of custody is important to the forensic scientist, jury or investigating officer. Moreover, chain of custody is like the delivery of online products. As we know that when we buy something from an online shop, they maintain each and everything from ordering to the delivery. In addition to this, they maintain the route of delivery of their product. So my dear student, here I would like to ask you why they are doing this. Take your own time and give me an answer to this. They do this because they want to maintain the integrity of the product, that is, from the dispatch to the delivery. But now you have another question, why I am sharing this story? Because we are not going to buy this product at the scene of crime. So just try to remember the previous topic, you will get an answer. You might have remembered the documentation of the crime scene where investigating officer writes each and everything related to crime. So now at the crime scene, in their investigating book, they write all the details, or it is the case diary or the Roznamacha, and maintain the integrity of physical evidence. I think now you have refreshed your memory of the previous lecture. I mean to say, the investigating officer is explaining the list of the person who kept the physical evidence under his or her custody, brought physical evidence from one place to another, or delivered the physical evidence from scene of crime to the police station, and finally to the forensic science laboratory. So dear student, it's simple word we can say, this is the list of all the people who came to take the possession of that particular physical evidence. Therefore, it is very necessary to understand the concept of chain of custody and chain of evidence. On the other hand, whenever the physical evidence is presented at the court of law as an exhibit, that time the investigating officer must show the continuity of the possession of physical evidence from crime scene to the court. As we know that there is no hard and fast rule which we have to follow. It depends on the skill and experience of the investigating officer, but for the sake of simplicity, it can be divided into following parts. 1. At crime scene to police station. As we know that scene of crime contains physical evidence. These physical evidences are the main source of the information by which crime can be proved. So, investigating officer should follow the chain from recognition of physical evidence to transferring of physical evidence. In this process, first of all, whosoever search the physical evidence, recognize the physical evidence and collect the physical evidence, handle it and transfer all the collected physical evidences. These all steps at crime scene should be written by the investigating officer in his own book. It means that investigating officer must maintain the chronological order of the possession of the physical evidence, which will maintain the integrity of the physical evidence. Let me make more clear to you. Suppose that if investigating officer collects a physical evidence at the scene of crime, but when a forensic scientist opens the evidence at FSL and he finds that it's the B physical evidence in the evidence box. So we can say in the above case that tampering might have occurred with all the physical evidences and it will destroy the physical evidence and challenge the integrity of the physical evidences. So that is why chain of custody is important. So after recognizing the physical evidence, exhibit should be placed in a container or a box with a label of the collector or the investigating officer. Now, whatever information is mentioned or labeled on the physical evidence or the container or the box should be written down for maintaining the chain of custody. The information that has to be written, it varies case to case, but following type of information is basic that should be mentioned in each and every case. Name and signature of the collector of exhibit and each person subsequently having its custody. Also, I would like to mention here one thing, that should also have the signature of the parties who are present at the scene of crime apart from the investigating officer. It is very important that in front of whom these packages are being packed. Now, next point is the time and date, that is at what time and on what date it was collected, handled, packed and transferred. It is very important. Next is type of crime, victims or suspect's name, storage location, brief description of the item it contains. Next, we come to point 2, police station to forensic science laboratory. After collecting the physical evidence at the crime scene, this is the duty of the investigating officer to send them under utmost precaution and care to the police station, and in the police station it should be placed in the locker. Therefore, the integrity of the physical evidence is maintained. The physical evidence will be stored at the locker of the police station according to the type, nature and composition of the material. So, as soon as possible, the investigating officer should fulfill all the necessary details that are required for the examination of physical evidence, and it should be forwarded to the forensic science laboratory that will also maintain the quality and the integrity of the physical evidence. After doing this, one officer, responsible person, will take the responsibility to delivering them to the forensic science laboratory. Forensic science laboratory has a separate store or section to receive the physical evidences from different sources or from different police stations. While submitting the physical evidence, the submitter will check again each and every part of the exhibit. If one finds that tampering is there in the exhibit, like breach of packing, torn of the packing or change of the seal impression or the broken seal, so he can return the physical evidence to the source. If all the condition is good, then he or she can admit the evidence for examination. While doing this process, one will also maintain the record that will also help to maintain the integrity of the exhibit. After examining the physical evidence, one will again repeat the whole process to maintain the integrity of the physical evidence. So, we can say this is a bilateral process that maintains from both the sides, that is the police and the forensic science laboratory. One thing is also important in the whole process, that everybody is liable at their own side who possesses the physical evidence. He should be responsible. One will be answerable if any type of happenings occur with the physical evidence. So, at the end of this module 2, I would like to conclude that integrity of the physical evidence is of utmost importance from the scene of crime, collection and packaging, to sending it to strong room of the police station, and from there sending it to forensic science laboratory and sending it back to the court of law for the trial. When the analysis report of the exhibit is presented at the court of law, the time court will require proof that evidence collected, handled, forwarded and transported during an investigation and the evidence ultimately submitted to the court are one and the same. Here, if court of law has any doubt on any of these steps, at that time to prove the integrity of exhibit has to be maintained, and if not, a chain of custody of the case must be demonstrated to the court of law. As we have discussed, this chain of custody is the chronological documentation of the movement location and possession of the physical evidence. So, this chain of custody will show who came in contact with the exhibit and at what time, under what circumstances, at what place, with the permission or without permission, and what changes, if any, were made to these evidence with permission or without permission. So, the basic information that is written on the physical evidence box, which we have discussed in the above module, that basic information serves to prove the chain of custody at the court of law and assist in admitting the item as an evidence. Another important thing is that at court of law also wants to get assurance about those people who collected and transferred the physical evidences, that was authorized or not authorized. So, I think you might have understood importance of chain of custody in the court of law. Thus, to confirm these facts, court of law demands the chain of custody, and for a fair trial, this is very important, and this shows the integrity of the investigating officer also. Dear student, now we are going to study the need of chain of custody. As we know that chain of custody is the chronological order of the documentation of the physical evidence from the crime scene to the forensic science laboratory. In the following case, court of law feels the need of chain of custody for proper recording. Investigating officer maintains the chain of custody for proper recording of the case. Therefore, it can help to the court of law as well as to those investigating officer who are newly appointed at the police station or newly transferred the case. Integrity of the physical evidence. Chain of custody also maintains the integrity of physical evidence from the crime scene to the police station and finally to the forensic science laboratory and vice versa. It must account for every person who handled or examined the evidence. To maintain the authenticity of the physical evidence, adhering to the standard procedures in the recording the location of physical evidence, marking it for identification, and properly completing evidence submission forms for laboratory analysis are the best guarantee that the evidence will withstand inquiries about what happened to it from the time it was found to the case presented at the court. As we know that chain of custody is a necessary step at each and every crime scene. Here, we will understand with the help of different example. Dear student, in the previous module, we have studied the different type of scene of crime. For example, murder crime scene, theft crime scene, a crime scene involving robbery or sexual assault, etc. Different type of physical evidences for maintaining the authenticity and integrity of the physical evidence. Chain of custody is a part and parcel of physical evidence that must be maintained at any cost. Chain of custody basic information is the same in every case or different physical evidences, but it may be changed according to the type of physical evidence or the place of information can also be changed. For example, in case of firearm, the information can be easily written at the butt of the firearm, but in case of blood or biological fluid, it is not possible, so it would be mentioned on the container. Or chain of custody form when it can be tagged with the physical evidence. So, this is the way to maintain and write the chain of custody. For the sake of understanding, we can use the following picture. This picture will easily depict what is the importance. For understanding this, with the example of murder case that had occurred in the garden. So, in this picture, we are seeing different type of physical evidence such as blood, sleepers or glass bottle, etc. As we know that crime scene is a very sensitive place from investigating point of view. Once it is contaminated or disturbed, investigation would be spoiled. It's crystal clear. So, here we will discuss some guideline that should be followed while making the chain of custody. As we know that the first and foremost step at the scene of crime is to search for physical evidence after securing the scene crime. While searching for physical evidence, searcher or investigator and their colleagues should do one thing. One thing that is they only search the physical evidence and then they inform their superior or the main investigating officer, and then he will collect the physical evidence according to the appropriate method, preserve it and label them according to their nature. As we can see in the picture, blood and other evidences are there, then they can have different procedure and treatment. Once an investigator selects an evidence container, he or she must mark it for identification. All evidence packages must be labeled and their openings must be sealed with evidence tape. Evidence containers often have a pre-printed identification form for the evidence collector to fill out. Otherwise, the collector must attach an evidence tag to the container. Also, one thing I would like to make you, the container, if required, should be spill proof or should have a proper tag which will say that it should not be disturbed or keep it upright position. This is very important. Investigating officer is only the person who would send the physical evidence in the evidence property room, then forensic science laboratory. After submitting the physical evidence, one should take receipt from the forensic science laboratory. Dear student, now we are going to study one of the interesting case in the history of forensic science. As we know that in this lecture we are studying the chain of custody. So, let's start with this case. Francisca Rosa is the first case in the world which was solved on the basis of proper chain of custody and proper evidence. On June 19, 1892, a murder case took place. In this case, 2 children were murdered at the outskirts of the town in the coastal area of Argentina. The victims were the illegitimate children of a 26-year-old woman named Francisca Rosas. During the time of investigation, local police found that late in the evening of the murder, Rosas had run into a neighbor's home, wild-eyed and screaming. She blurted out, "He killed my children." Velasquez, the Rosas' neighbor, immediately went to Rosa's hut and found the children's skull were smashed. They were lying in considerable amount of blood. Upon interviewing of Rosas, local police found that a man named Velasquez who wanted to marry her. She had refused his proposal several times as she was in love with another man. Early on the day of the murder, Velasquez has visited Rosas again and had been very insistent. After investigating all the facts, local police arrested Velasquez, but while examining the scene of crime, a local police found a brown stain in the bed. Careful examination revealed that it was a fingerprint, but question was of whom? So, the local police collected the fingerprint and matched the fingerprint with that of Rosas. When this evidence was presented to her, she broke down and admitted that she had killed the children. In this, the case study chain of custody was properly maintained by the investigating officer. But if the investigating officer could breach the chain of custody, and the whole investigating should have been spoiled. So here, my dear student, the importance you might have got. The important point is that how they maintain the chain of custody. Earlier they had arrested. The person was very important, and if they didn't maintain the chain of custody, that is the important custody of the fingerprints, the blood stained fingerprints, then they never would have reached to the actual criminal, that is the Rosas, who had murdered her own children. So I think you got clear about the importance of chain of custody. After studying this lecture, the students will be able to define the chain of custody. Moreover, we have also discussed the steps of the chain of custody and how chain of custody could be broken down. In addition to this, we also discussed how chain of custody maintains the integrity of physical evidence and save the exhibit from tampering. We have also learned the need of chain of custody and importance of physical evidence at court of law. So, at last, We can say chain of custody is a good way to maintain the quality and integrity of the physical evidence at the court of law as well as at the scene of crime. With all these information here, we come to the end of today's lecture on chain of custody. Do keep in mind what we have discussed today. It's time for you all to do some self-study. This is Professor Devashish Bose signing off. If you want to learn more and enhance your knowledge, you may log on to our website for MCQ, quizzes, LORs at www.cec.nic.in. Till then, goodbye.